avoid any negative impact. They do their own studies. Typically, if someone finds this to be any type of detrimental condition, like if they're near an airport and there's overhead noise, they go to the assessor and they want their assessed value reduced because of this, because they feel that this is going to impact the marketability of their home. They're not getting any of those requests. So overall, from their own studies and from the community itself, they're not seeing the types of responses that they would typically see if something was being perceived to have a negative influence on property values.
So another common question that you hear, and this gets a whole lot of play on social media, is our solar cells somehow toxic? And to get an answer to that, again, I went back to a panel of experts, starting with Dr. Anit Ankel, who is a civil engineer at Michigan State University. She did her PhD on the environmental impacts of clean energy technology, specializing in solar, so this is literally her life's work. Pretty good person to start with, so I just started out and asked her the question.
So, to your knowledge, has there ever been an instance where soil or water was contaminated related to a solar installation?
No.
So solar energy does not in any way, shape, or form cause any harm to the soil or to groundwater.
According to the Department of Energy, there's not a single instance of solar farm ever polluting groundwater. In terms of construction, it's one of the lowest impact methods of doing construction per acre, anything else that you want to do.
There's no cases of solar farm impacting groundwater. There's very little below grade in a solar farm. There are trenches with conduits and electrical wires, which is not unlike conduit electrical wires and many types of other construction or installations. The inverters and transformers, there's nothing about them that leaks anything or anything comes off that could possibly impact groundwater, and nothing about the solar modules or solar panels that could impact groundwater.
And I've never seen results that show contamination after like a solar farm. I've seen that people, after the solar farm is there, they take sample and then they find stuff, but since they didn't check what was in it before they installed the solar panels, we cannot say it's from the solar panels. And what I've seen, what they found, is not things that are in the solar panels anyway, so it was utter contamination. So, no, I haven't seen anything that shows that solar panels will be toxic or contribute to toxicity.
There's no study that has shown any kind of toxic or other negative effect on the crops that we grow.
So it's really one of the cleanest forms of energy, probably the cleanest that you're able to find.
So, next big question that commonly comes up with both wind and sun is what happens when the wind stops or the sun goes down? And, a lot of people think, well, that's a showstopper. There can be no answer to that. But what the dirty little secret that all power engineers know is that all sources of energy are intermittent. They are intermittent at different frequencies and for different reasons. But you can't build out a grid, you can't put a new power plant of any kind on a grid without having and showing regulators that you have some way to compensate if that particular power plant, whatever flavor, breaks. Perfect example, just from the last few months, the Donald C. Cook nuclear plant, which is just down the coast here, maybe 80 or 90 miles, shut down suddenly, unexpectedly on August 29th, right kind of smack in the peak air conditioning season. It shut down because a failure of a coolant pump motor, and that's a good thing because you don't want coolant pump motors to fail on your nuclear plant. So they have very elaborate safety systems, and so they have a tendency to shut down occasionally, unexpectedly, and in this case, bringing 1,000 megawatts offline. So what happened? Do you all remember the Great Michigan Blackout of August 29th? Neither do I, because the grid is so structured that it just sort of rolls right on, and other sources of power fill in, and there's a number of different procedures that the engineers take when these things happen. Solar and wind, because they are eminently predictable, are actually, in some respects, much easier to handle because they won't have a tendency to shut off 1,000 megawatts on you all at the same time. Whereas it's very easy to check the weather forecast to see what wind is doing, or simply check your iPhone to know when the sun is going to go down. So, a typical coal plant will be down 44 days out of the year, a nuclear plant 36 days out of the year, and of course every 17 months or so has to refuel, and then it's down for 4 to 6 weeks. So all of these forms of energy have different kinds of intermittencies and downtimes that you have to compensate for. What's different that we have, and what is really a game-changing technology, is now we are developing new kinds of energy storage. So when we have lots of wind, lots of sun, maybe sometimes more than what we can use, we can start storing that. And this price of the energy storage, of which there are literally dozens of technologies coming forward right now, is dropping on more or less the same kind of path that we have seen solar drop. Now, Michigan is uniquely placed in the Midwest because we already have had, for the last 40 years, a world-class energy storage capability that a lot of people don't know about. It is a facility up the road in Ludington, the Ludington Pump Storage Power Plant. And I'm going to let Dr. Bauer from Michigan State explain, and also you're going to see Patty Poppy here, who is, up until 2 years ago, the chairman of Consumers Energy. So both of these experts can tell you how this works.
The remaining question is, of course, what do you do about energy storage? And fortunately in Michigan, this has been solved completely. We have the largest battery that I know of, at least in North America, here in Michigan, and it's called the Ludington Pump Hydro Storage Plant.
Ludington Pump Storage is the great engineering marvel, one of the great engineering marvels of the world. It is the 4th largest battery in the world. It has 6 units. I don't know how familiar you are, if you've ever visited, but you should because it's gorgeous. It's the most gorgeous power plant in the world. On the banks of Lake Michigan, pumps water up into a 27 billion gallon reservoir, and we have the 6 largest motors in the world. Each unit has a 500,000 horsepower motor. And those 6 largest motors in the world pump the water up. They power the pumps that take the water up into the reservoir. And then when we need the power, those motors rotate and reverse generate electricity. 2,200 megawatts of carbon-free, emission-free, clean, pure Michigan power. Today, we fill the reservoir once a day. But when we have fully deployed those 5 and then 6,000 megawatts of solar, we'll have excess power in the day. California is dealing with this, and they're concerned about what do you do with extra power in the daytime.
In Arizona these days, between the hours of 11 a.m. and 2 p.m., we get negatively priced electricity from California. There's so much solar being produced in California, they can't use it all. They push it to Arizona during those hours and pay our utilities to take it off the grid.
And guess what we're going to do with it? We're going to pump and fill the reservoir at Ludington. And then we're going to use that reservoir to serve the peak load. And then at night, our wind farms generating extra electricity will also then refill the pond, and we're going to get to refill that pond twice a day because of the upgrade we've done on those motors. That is exciting. That's it. That doubles the capacity of that battery for the service of people of Michigan and the inclusion then in our clean energy plan.
So another question that comes up very commonly with solar is we're placing some solar installations on farmland. Is farmland an appropriate use for solar? And so I want to just run through a little bit of arithmetic here. I'm not a mathematician, but I can do simple operations. Consumers Energy has a plan for 8,000 megawatts of solar capacity by 2040. University of Michigan says 5 acres per megawatt installed. That gives us 40,000 acres. Total agricultural acres in Michigan, according to the Michigan Department of Agriculture, is 10 million. Pretty ambitious build out by one of our major utilities amounts to 0.4% of farmland in the state of Michigan. And just to compare that to some other things, other uses of land that we might be more familiar with, I looked up the number of golf courses in Michigan, 650, you knew. Average size of the golf courses in acres, according to Google, is 150. Multiply that out, 97,000 acres. So we've got more than double, way more than double, acreage in golf courses than we would have in a fairly ambitious build out by Consumers Energy. Another primary use of land that we've kind of gotten used to over the last 40 years, in other words, using farmland to produce energy, is ethanol. We grow approximately 2,350,000, give or take, acres of corn in Michigan. Of that, about 40% go for ethanol, so figure about 900,000, almost 1 million acres. So more than 10 times as much is currently being used for ethanol as would be used for, again, an ambitious build out of solar. And of course, we know that ethanol, which has become a very important cash crop for farmers across the country, is going away because General Motors, Ford, Stellantis, Volkswagen, Toyota, all of the major car makers are going to electric vehicles. So the demand for that ethanol is going to be going away. And yet we still are going to need something that's going to help farmers stay in business and stay on the land. Moreover, there is another issue, is when we talk about preserving farmland, I think what we